Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to Get Hit with the Truth. So today we're doing the end of year champions report for the WBC, the World Boxing Council. That's the green belt. We're going to cover all divisions from 122 all the way to heavyweight, all the champions coming into the year, what happened with each belt, and what's coming up in 2023 potentially. So we're going to jump right in and start with the 122-pound super bantamweight division. Entering the year, it was undefeated Stephen Fulton Jr. Came in as the WBC and WBO unified champion. He had captured the WBC title in a unification bout in 2021 when he defeated Brandon Figueroa. And in June, he made a mandatory defense of both his belts against former unified champion Daniel Roman. Now, he came into favor, but I think a lot of people thought it could be competitive, but he absolutely dominated Roman, picked him apart, and scored a one-sided unanimous decision as he retained both belts. So after that, there was talks about him fighting Luis Neri, but that never came to fruition. And then towards the end of the year, the WBC ordered Stephen Fulton and Brandon Figueroa to compete for the interim featherweight title at 126 pounds. But as of right now, Fulton's going to be allowed to move up and fight for that. And I think depending on whether he wins or loses is going to determine on whether he stays champion at 122 or not. Personally, I don't know, to be honest. I think if he loses to Figueroa, it's going to be a close enough battle again it's going to be a close enough battle to where he might just stay at 126, and there's a lot more potential opponents at 126 for him anyways, so we'll see how it shakes down. I personally think that it's probably better than a 50% chance that he's going to be moving up to 126 and staying there, win or lose against Figueroa. And then I could see Naoya Inoue. I could see him capturing the vacant title, at least one of them, because he currently is the undisputed champion at 118, and he's planning on moving up to 122. So, there's a lot of different avenues it could go. We'll just have to see what happens when Fulton fights Figueroa. Speaking of 126 featherweight, Gary Russell Jr. entered the year as the longtime champion, a belt he won back in 2015 when he knocked out Johnny Gonzalez in 4 rounds. He entered the year, and in January he made a mandatory defense against undefeated Mark Magsayo. I think it was a mandatory defense. And in that fight, he injured his shoulder. I think his shoulder was already injured, but he re-injured it. He fought with one arm pretty much the most of the fight. But Magsayo had a good first few rounds until Russell kind of got used to the injury. Russell did come back in the second half of the fight, but he was really struggling, only being able to throw with one hand. And it went to the scorecards where Magsayo took a close majority decision and captured the WBC championship in an upset. Then in July, another mandatory was due against former 122-pound champ and undefeated Ray Vargas. So Magsayo and Vargas squared off, and they ended up having a great fight. Vargas, instead of using his height, decided to trade with Magsayo. He got knocked down late in the fight, but he did just enough to where when it went to the scorecards, he got a close split decision, and deserving decision, as he became the new WBC champion at 126, becoming a 2-division champ. Then there was talks about him unifying belts at Leo Santa Cruz. That was the big talk that looked like it was going to happen, and then that fell apart because Vargas has decided to move up to 130 and challenge for the vacant super featherweight title against O'Shaquie Foster. So I'm impressed with Vargas wanting to do that. I personally don't feel like he's going to beat Foster at 130, but I'm not to say he doesn't have a good chance. But I think if he loses, I think he comes back down to 126, and he's probably going to fight the winner of the interim title fight between Figueroa and Fulton as they compete in a rematch against each other. So very much so looking forward to that. To see what happens with Vargas. He's already got the deal is in place. They're just waiting to finalize the fight at 130. But yeah, I definitely think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the WBC title at 126. 130 pounds, super featherweight. Undefeated Oscar Valdez entered the year as champion, a belt he captured in early in 2021 when he scored a spectacular upset knockout over Miguel Berchelt. In April of this year, he attempted to unify belts against undefeated WBO champion Shakur Stevenson as they battled to determine the top dog at 130 and to unify belts. It was a really good, Valdez did the best he could, but he just couldn't keep up with the slick boxing style and aggressiveness also of Shakur Stevenson. Stevenson dominated the action, unified the WBC and WBO belts, and stayed undefeated. But then in his initial defense, he came in overweight against Robson Conceição and was stripped of the titles on the scales, as he didn't even attempt to make weight the second time. The vacant title still went on the line for Conceição in September against Stevenson. Stevenson beat him, and the belts remained vacant. Then Ray Vargas decided to move, since he was a champion at 126, decided he wanted a crack at the title at 130 to become a 3-division world champ. So he is moving up to fight O'Shaquie Foster for the vacant WBC title. They've already worked out a deal. We're waiting for the fight to be finalized. I personally think Foster's going to beat Vargas. After that, it's just really up to who wants to fight Foster. He's got one of those styles that, it's a pure boxing style, so I'm not sure he's going to be a desired guy to want to fight. But, hey, with a world title, you never know. But I also think Vargas has a serious shot of pulling off the win, so we'll see what happens. And hopefully that fight gets announced very soon. 135 lightweight, undefeated Devin Haney entered the year as a champion. That was a belt he was upgraded to champion with, I think, back in 2019. He ended up stepping in to fight George Kambosos in June for the undisputed title. Kambosos was the undefeated unified champ. He held the other 3 belts. They went at it, and he went to enemy territory in Australia and completely outboxed Kambosos, handing him his first loss and a convincing unanimous decision as he became the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. But there was a rematch clause in the contract. So in October, the two would fight again for the undisputed title, and Haney this time was meaner, more aggressive. He dominated Kambosos even more, almost stopped him, lopsided, a unanimous decision as he retained the undisputed title. Now, I just read today that Bob Arum announced that Haney and Lomachenko have agreed for an undisputed title fight to take place early in 2023. I'm thinking probably March or April. You're going to see Devin Haney defending the undisputed title against former champ Vasily Lomachenko. Huge fight right there for both guys. I'm picking Lomachenko to win. After that, it's kind of up in the air on which belts Lomachenko is going to decide to keep. Personally, he'll probably keep the WBC belt and the WBO belt because he's the #1 contender for both of those titles. Other than that, we don't know what's going to happen in the second half of the year. If Gervonta Tank Davis at the catchweight of 136 defeats Ryan Garcia, I think he might cash in on a mandatory and go after a fight with Lomachenko. Or Haney, depending on who wins the fight. But personally, for me, I think Ryan Garcia is going to beat Tank, and I think Lomachenko is going to beat Haney. But I really could see either one of those scenarios going the other way, and we'll see what goes down. But at the very least, first half of the year, Haney versus Lomachenko should be good for the undisputed lightweight championship. 140 junior welterweight. Undefeated Josh Taylor entered the year as champion. That was a belt that he captured in 2021 when he became the undisputed junior welterweight champ by almost knocking out Jose Ramirez. Taylor in February would defend all 4 belts against his WBO mandatory challenger and undefeated Jack Catterall. Taylor would he pretty much should have lost the fight against Catterall. And from what most people say, he got knocked down. He fought hard. It was close, but most people felt Catterall should have won. It was a controversial split decision win for Taylor. and he held on to the titles. But Taylor was planning on moving up to 147 welterweight. Those were his original plans, but he got so much backlash from the controversial decision that he decided to vacate 3 of his 4 belts, and he vacated the WBC title also. So that title went vacant. It was then ordered for former champ Jose Ramirez to fight Jose Cepeda for the vacant title, but Ramirez decided to give up his opportunity right now because I think he was getting married before the end of the year to his longtime fiance. And then the WBC ordered Cepeda to fight Regis Prograis instead, the former champ. That fight popped off in November, and Prograis went out there and just methodically broke down Jose Cepeda and knocked him out in the 11th round, impressively stopped him in the 11th round to capture his 2nd world title and become the WBC champ. So big time win for Prograis right there. It was supposed to be Prograis fighting, the winner fighting Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is the #1 contender. But Ramirez, once he saw the purse split was 65-35, he said that wasn't good enough for him. He would have taken 40% or more, but not any less than 40. So he decided to not have his fight with Regis Prograis. Pretty upset about that. I was looking forward to that matchup. Now Prograis is in optional mode. He can pretty much fight whoever he wants next as long as the fight can be made. But Pro Bellum, his promoter, which is ran by Richard Schaefer, doesn't work with Top Rank, and Top Rank has all the top guys right now, most of them. They do work with the PBC. Maybe a fight can be made with somebody there. And they also have like a Lipin Yates or somebody on that level. Or, you know, there's also, in my opinion, the option of a showdown with Sandor Martin, who's coming off that strong performance against Teofimo Lopez. But we just got to wait and see what happens. Hopefully Prograis gets a good, solid opponent next. But I don't think anybody's going to beat Prograis. That's my opinion. I think he's running, unless he decides to move up to 147, I think he's running coast to coast as a champion in 2023. 147 welterweight. Undefeated Errol Spence Jr. entered the year as champion. He was the unified champion. He captured his WBC title back in 2019 when he got that split decision win over Sean Porter to unify belts. He entered the year, and in April he attempted to unify more belts as he took on WBA champion Yordenis Ugas, fresh off his win over Manny Pacquiao. Outside of him being caught, pretty much getting caught off guard with a shot, he dominated Ugas from start to finish, completely broke him down, beat him up, and got an 11th, I think it was a 10th round TKO win as he unified 3 of the 4 belts at welterweight. The rest of the year was spent on trying to land a big undisputed showdown with undefeated Terrence Crawford. They almost had it done. It fell through last minute, and Spence didn't end up fighting. Well, the WBC has ordered Spence to fight his mandatory in Keith One-Time Thurman, the former unified champ, but Spence is saying he's got options, and there's still talk of him and Crawford possibly locking horns in the first half of the year. So we'll see what happens. If that does indeed happen, I think he's going to lose to Crawford. And then we'll see what Crawford decides to do after that, which belt he holds on to, or if he moves up in weight. But if Spence stays champion and doesn't fight Crawford, I think he's probably going to fight Thurman, and I think he beats Keith Thurman. So just got to wait and see what goes down for that belt, but it should be good to find out who is going to be fighting for the WBC title at 147. 154 super welterweight. Jermell Charlo entered the year as the reigning unified WBC and unified champion. He also held the WBA and IBF belts. He captured his WBC title back in I believe it was 2019, when he stopped Tony Harrison in their rematch to regain the belt. He went out in May and attempted to become the undisputed champion when he took on undefeated WBO champ Brian Castano in a rematch from their 2021 bout that ended in a controversial draw that a lot of people thought Castano won. This time Charlo sat down on his punches and really methodically broke down Castano and eventually knocked him out impressively in the 10th round to become the undisputed super welterweight champion of the world at 154. Big time win right there. He holds all 4 titles. He didn't fight the rest of the year, but his next fight is good to go for Saturday, January 28th on Showtime, where he is going to be defending all the WBC and all 4 titles against his WBO mandatory challenger, undefeated Tim Tszyu of Australia. I personally think Charlo's going to knock Tszyu out, but Charlo might be moving up to 160, or he might be giving up a couple belts because, and I think the WBC is going to be one of them, unless Charlo decides he wants to fight Sebastian Fundora. Fundora's his interim champion. Charlo might not be able to avoid that fight with Fundora for the remainder of 2023. So if he wants to fight him, the fight's going to be there. And if he does fight him, I think he loses to Fundora. But I do think he has a chance. But if he doesn't, I think he's going to end up having to vacate. And I think the WBC title would be one of the belts he vacates. And he would either move up in weight or fight somebody else in an optional defense. We'll see what happens, but I think Fundora is likely going to end the year as the WBC champion. Now, 160 middleweight. Undefeated Jermall Charlo entered the year as the reigning champ, a belt that he captured, when did he capture that belt? I think it was back in 2018. 2018, he was upgraded to full champion. Anyways, he didn't fight at all in 2022. He was supposed to take on Maciej Sulecki in June, and he cited a back injury, and that fight was never came back on the table, and he sat out the rest of the year. Now he's talking about moving up to 168. He also said he's going to be back in February, but we haven't heard anything on that. I personally don't know what the hell is going on with Charlo, what he's planning on doing. I hope the WBC strips him of his title. But in reality, again, I don't know what the hell he's doing. I'm leaning towards he's probably going to move to 168, and maybe his brother will make a move up to 160. I also think there's a chance he fights Carlos Adames at some point, who's the interim champ. But I really don't know what the hell Charlo's going to do, and I'm really done wasting my time speculating on it. So, because Charlo really has me annoyed. He's not a fighting champion. 168 super middleweight. Canelo Alvarez entered the year as the reigning champion, a title that he captured in December of 2020 when he defeated Callum Smith by a one-sided unanimous decision. He was also the undisputed champ coming in and the pound-for-pound king. In May, he decided to move up to 175 and challenge for the light heavyweight title against Dimitri Bivol. He came up short there, and in September, he moved back down to super middleweight to defend his WBC and undisputed crown against against unified middleweight champ Triple G Gennady Golovkin in a third fight. He scored a convincing unanimous decision over Triple G and retained his undisputed title. Now the talk is that Canelo is likely in May going to take what he calls a tune-up bout, and it's likely going to be against John Ryder. And there's speculation it could be in the United Kingdom, as Ryder's from England. But Ryder is his WBO mandatory, is his interim champion, and it's mandatory there. So he's probably going to fight him there. I believe Canelo knocks Ryder out. And then now Dimitri Bivol is saying he wants to move down to 168 to challenge for Canelo's undisputed title, because he wants all the titles. And then he also does not like that Canelo made the excuse, according to Bivol, that 175 wasn't his weight and that's why he lost. So Bivol says it's not about the money, that's what he wants to do. So I really think Canelo's probably fighting the whole year at 168. And, I don't know. I think he has a much better chance of beating Bivol at 168 than 175. And we just got to wait and see what happens. But I at least think he's going to defeat John Ryder in May. And then we'll see what happens between him and Bivol for September. 175, Arthur Beterbiev entered the year as the undefeated WBC and unified champion. He also held the IBF title. He captured his WBC belt, though, back in 2018 when he unified titles and knocked out Alexander Vovcik in the 11th round of that really good battle. Beterbiev in June attempted to unify belts again when he took on WBO champion Joe Smith Jr. Many people were expecting a slugfest. Beterbiev was the favorite, but Beterbiev wasted no time. He hurt Joe Smith in the first round, put him down. Second round, he finished him off impressively and unified 3 of the 4 belts at 175 light heavyweight. He was going to make a WBO mandatory against Anthony Yard, but that fight, he suffered an injury in training, so the fight got pushed off into 2023. Him and Anthony Yard will be squaring off on Saturday, January 28th on ESPN for the unified light heavyweight title. After that, it's up in the air what Beterbiev is going to do. There's speculation of an undisputed title fight with Dimitri Bivol, the WBA champion. There's his WBC mandatory in Callum Smith, which would be, solid, be interesting. And we know his IBF mandatory is being decided soon between Jean Pascal and Michael Eifert, I think the guy's name is. So we got to see what happens, but unless he fights Bivol, I don't think Beterbiev is going to lose his WBC title or his unified title, but we'll see what shakes down. But I think he's going to knock out Yard, but I do think Yard is a very live underdog at the end of January, so make sure you're watching that fight on ESPN. 200 cruiserweight, Ilunga Makabu entered the year as the reigning champion. He captured that belt, I believe, in 2020 when he defeated Mikhail Cieslak by a controversial decision. In January, he put the title on the line in a mandatory defense against Tabisu Mashunu, who he defeated back in 2015 when he knocked Mashunu out, but Mashunu was winning the fight on the scorecards. Mashunu had been hot since then, obviously since then, especially the last couple of years. And he and Makabu were, at the time, the winner. There was speculation that the winner was going to get Canelo to come all the way up to cruiserweight to fight him. So there was a lot riding on the line. I didn't see the fight, but a lot of people thought that Mashunu should have been the new champion, but it went to the scorecards and Makabu got away with a controversial split decision and retained his championship. He did not fight the remainder of the year. He was supposed to fight Riyad Merhi. Merhi pulled out and decided to move up to the heavyweight division. Now a mandatory fight has been ordered for Makabu to fight Noel Gavor or Mikhailian, whatever you want to call him. This is Mikhailian's first attempt at a world title. He has an awkward style. They're fighting in January. I personally think Mikhailian or whatever his name is going to beat Makabu, but I do think Makabu's got a good chance of keeping the belt. After that, it's kind of up in the air depending on who walks out as the world champion. So we'll see what goes down after that fight in January for the cruiserweight title. And finally, the heavyweight championship. Tyson Fury entered the year as the undefeated champion, a title that he captured back in 2020 when he knocked out Deontay Wilder in their rematch, in 7 rounds of their rematch. I believe it was April, he would make a mandatory defense of his title against interim champion Dillian Whyte in an all-British showdown. He would dominate Dillian Whyte, stopping him impressively in 6 rounds to retain his title. Then he was looking for an opponent for the end of the year. He almost had the Anthony Joshua fight signed. He wanted Usyk, but Usyk said he wouldn't have enough time to get prepared after the Joshua fight that he had in August. So both those fights fell through, and Fury just decided to fight a local guy in Derek Chisora for a 3rd time. They hadn't fought since, I believe, 2014 when Fury stopped him in that rematch. So Fury would take on Chisora again. He would pound on Chisora for 10 rounds, and the referee finally stopped it, I believe, in the 11th, and Fury would retain his title. So Tyson Fury, big, a good solid year of defending his belts. He says he wants to continue on as world champion. Heading into 2023, Bob Arum has said that he and unified champion and undefeated Oleksandr Usyk have agreed to an undisputed title fight. That means all mandatories have been satisfied, taking step-aside money most likely. That fight has not been finalized, but both fighters have agreed to it. So that means that Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk are fighting. I think Fury's going to beat Alexander Usyk, even though I think Usyk is a live underdog. I think Fury's going to beat him and become undisputed champ. After that, I think Fury's going to hold on to 1 or 2 belts. And the belt I think he absolutely holds on to is the WBC title, the belt he currently has. The reason why is you look at all the guys that are going to be mandatories. You have Deontay, you have Joe Joyce, undefeated WBO interim champion right now. He's very good, and it would be a good fight for England, but he's dangerous, and he doesn't have a big name. You got Daniel Dubois, good English fighter, not a big name either, though, outside of the UK. He's the WBA regular champ and mandatory. Then you have Filip Hrgovic for the IBF. Definitely doesn't have a big name. Wasn't that impressive when he became mandatory #1 contender. So likely not going to hold on to that belt. But the WBC title currently has Andy Ruiz as the interim champion, and we're most likely going to see Andy Ruiz and Deontay Wilder fight for the WBC interim title in the first half of the year. And a lot of people, myself included, think Wilder's going to knock Ruiz out, or even if Ruiz beats Wilder, that both of those guys are much more attractive opponents as a mandatory than any of his other ones. So I think Fury, after he beats Usyk, unless they sign a rematch clause, I think he's going to vacate at least 2 of his belts, maybe 3, but I definitely think he's going to hold on to his WBC belt, and we're probably going to see him defend against either Deontay Wilder, or if Andy Ruiz beats Wilder, he'll fight him, or Anthony Joshua in the second half of the year. Unless Usyk, unless the fight with Usyk is close and they want to have a rematch. But Fury said he wants to fight 3 times. I don't know how realistic that is, but hey, we'll see what happens. Fury pretty much does whatever the hell he wants. And if he makes easy work of his opponents, he might just be able to fight that many times. So we'll see what happens, but that's it. That's the Champions Report for the WBC, the World Boxing Council, covering all divisions from 122 to heavyweight in 2022 and heading into 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.